guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a video game review, even though I am talking about a new video game. A couple years ago, I made a video on Returnal, which wasn't necessarily a review. I was basically giving my impressions and thoughts on the game. I didn't review it because I never beat it, mainly just due to the fact that I lost all my progress as soon as my PS5 turned off because you couldn't save in that game, so I just gave my thoughts on the game. I thought it was a great game, so you know what, I'm going to do the same thing for this. And that, of course, is being for Baldur's Gate 3. I really wanted to make a video on this, even if I didn't review the game, and I'm not even close to beating it. I don't even think I'm at Act 2 yet, because this game has just so much content, and sure, I may have beaten Tears of the Kingdom, but I feel like that game was easier to get through, because Baldur's Gate 3 is not the type of game that holds your hand. And since this game won Game of the Year at the Game of the Year Awards, I think it would be only fitting if I did make a video giving my thoughts on it. Especially since I talked about Lord of the Rings Gollum, which is considered to be the worst game of the year, so it would only be fair if I talked about the so-called best game of the year. Now, I'm just going to give you guys my full impressions on the game. It came out in September. It started off as early access back in 2017, I believe, with some mostly positive feedback. But now that the full game has been released, people have been calling it a masterpiece, a new game changer for RPGs, and one of the best RPGs ever made, surpassing even its predecessors in almost every single way. Similar with The Witcher 3. How The Witcher 3 is pretty much the only Witcher game you ever need to play, even though the first two games were well received as well. So, yeah, what made this game such a hit with not just critics but gamers alike? Well, there is a lot to this game. Basically, it's a Dungeons & Dragons fan's, absolute dream. That's basically what you're doing in this game. You're playing Dungeons & Dragons, and this is a little bit complicated for me because I know absolutely nothing about Dungeons & Dragons. Though I have gotten pretty far into the game, and I know how the whole dice thing works. You roll a greater number, your move is a success, but of course if it's lower, then it's a failure, so I do know that aspect. Also, there's a lot of narration throughout the game, so I feel like that's also part of the Dungeons & Dragons vibe. It's not like a turn-based, Japanese RPG. I mean, the game is turn-based, which I'm going to bring up in a minute, and how I feel about that whole system, because there were actually games that managed to get inspiration from the Baldur's Gate series, like the Divinity Original Sin series, which I think are great games, though I do get frustrated with them because I'm not really into the whole moveset that much, but they're still great games. The second game I think is even better than the first game. Now, I didn't play this game on PC because I'm not really a PC gamer, so I had to wait a few weeks for the PS5 version to come out, and that had me a little bit nervous because usually later ports don't really tend to be as good because they honestly tend to fall flat and just have so many technical problems. Luckily, the PS5 version got just as much love as the PC version, so it didn't matter which version I was playing. Now, basically, you are playing as, there are tons of different classes and tons of different customization options for your character. So much, hundreds of customization, though I don't really tend to use it that much because sometimes, or most of the time, I'm usually happy with the way I make my characters. But yeah, male, female option, as always. Basically, throughout your journey, you have a parasite implanted into you, and throughout a lot of your journey, you have two options. You can either get the parasite removed, or you can get upgrades for your parasite, which will allow you to use various different movesets to help you more in combat, which is something that I feel like most players are going to tend to do because you're probably going to need as much help as you can. You have various different allies to help you out, and you can play online too, which is always helpful. I usually play solo. Now, one thing I do have to mention is one of my favorite things about the game is how cinematic it is. The way the cutscenes play out, and this is a massive game too. There is a countless amount of cutscenes throughout this game, and I should also bring up that you can romance some of the characters as well, which is one of the big things that people talk about is how bizarre the scenes are. It was even revealed before the game was even released, and I'm not even gonna bring it up because it's yeah, I did romance one of them, and yeah, this probably this probably gives the scenes in The Witcher 3 a run for its money because wow, yeah, but you know what? I'm not even gonna go that far now. Basically, the way combat works is the tactical, moving from one area to another. If you play games like XCOM, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I am terrible at this game, I should also mention, because I never really understood the entire tactical thing because, well, it's not really my thing. I've always been more into combat, but there are times where I felt like I was getting better at this. Now, this is an RPG, but this isn't necessarily the type of RPG where you can just grind experience points, making your character stronger, as enemies tend to stay dead. Like, there's no respawning enemies, like in the Souls series or anything like that, and that sometimes isn't always helpful, because sometimes I feel like I'm just way too underpowered for certain parts. Like, I'm stuck on this one level where enemies just keep spawning over and over and over and over, and I have to defeat these orbs. I can't really tell if I'm supposed to fight the enemies or the orbs. Like, yeah, I'm not really going to show any gameplay footage of this entire thing because of the graphic imagery that the game shows, and I don't know. I'm just giving my impressions. This isn't necessarily a review, as I think this game so far is certainly a work of art. Like the way the developers handle a lot of the layouts and the dialogue options. There are so many dialogue options. Like, it was really hard for me to know what exactly I should choose because you always have to be careful when you're choosing the dialogue options in a game like this because, wow, there are so many dialogue options that can change up the story, and if you say things wrong, you might get locked out of quests. And this isn't necessarily the type of game that tells you what you're supposed to do, like most modern games do. But other than, leaving a marker, that's pretty much it. But the way the game plays out, the way you have to do specific choices, that's pretty much all up to you. Or you can always just look up the game. In fact, I feel like it might be easier to just look up a walkthrough if you're going through this game, but that would probably take way longer. And the story takes around, I'm not even joking, like 70 hours to beat. Compare that to Starfield's 17 hours and Diablo 4's 20, less than 20-hour main campaign. So yeah, it shows that they went all out here with the content. One thing I will also mention is the save feature. Sometimes it doesn't auto-save automatically the way I want it to, not even during after battles most of the time, so I always have to make sure to save after every battle because there are a lot of times where I lost so much progress, 5 hours total, where I had to replay certain parts of the game, big parts too. So that's one thing that I do have to bring up. Just a mild criticism I do have of the game, but other than that, the game might have been very frustrating for me, and I played on the lowest difficulty because I just wanted to explore the story, but I feel like if I was to get any further, or any person get any further, you're going to have to do as many side quests as possible because there are just as much to the side quests as there are to the main quests. There is just so much to this game that I can't even begin to describe it. I'm probably even missing a few things, but then again, I haven't even beaten a quarter of the game yet. Now, with all that being said, with all the stuff that the game manages to get right, is it truly deserving of Game of the Year? Well, I can definitely tell you this. It is one of the best games to come out this year, and I definitely see why people have been praising it, considering it to be Game of the Year, and why it won so many Game of the Year awards. Is it my Game of the Year? I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm just going to have to try to play as much as possible before the year ends, but even though I am frustrated with the game, I honestly blame myself because, like I said before, I'm not fully familiar with Dungeons and Dragons aspect, but because I was just so invested with the whole Dungeons and Dragons narrative and the way the game works, it's a game that I do want to continue getting better at because the game has really inspired me to just want to keep going because I'm so invested with the story and the characters too. They are so fleshed out, so well developed, especially since the characters have their own quests that you can partake in to help them along their journey, bringing in so much development to them. So, yeah, the developers knew exactly what they were doing, not just with the story, but with the characters and the world. And there are various different ways you can beat enemies in combat too. Like, you can pretty much interact with any object in this game. Like, any, like, flammable object or stuff that falls from the ceiling. It tends to be very helpful. So, my thoughts so far, I think it's an amazing game. Even though I suck badly at it, I entirely blame myself because there are a lot of times where I just feel like I'm not doing something right, and it's going to be really hard for me to look up all these guides for the game because the game just has so much, and it doesn't always hold your hand. But you know what? The game had me wanting to keep going, so yeah, chances are it's a game that I'm going to be busy with for a long time, and that's completely okay because the game just has so much. The game has so much right, it barely has anything wrong. It's pretty much a very forgiving game because of all the stuff it succeeds at. So, yeah, my thoughts on the game, it is an incredible game, and I do want to continue playing it, and you are going to see it pretty high on my Game of the Year list. I'm not sure if it's my Game of the Year yet because Tears of the Kingdom was incredible as well, and I spent hundreds of hours in that game. This game I already spent like a little less than 20 hours in, so I really have a lot left to get through. But hey, it's incredible so far. I might be bad at it, but I want to continue to get better, and I'm starting to learn the mechanics a lot more. So yeah, I blame myself for not learning this whole Dungeons and Dragons thing. If I was more familiar into it, then yeah, it would probably be easier for me. But the game has so much going for it in terms of customization and quests and storyline and characters. It pretty much has everything you could want in an RPG with tactical elements. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm not sure what my rating would be for it because again, this isn't a review, but yeah, but hey, if you still haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, you're definitely missing out. There is so much to this game that yeah, that just begs you to play it. It's truly a work of art, if I do say so myself. And yeah, I don't know what there is more to say. Well, there is more to say, it's just I haven't gotten into yeah. I'm not sure if I will review the game in the future, if I ever do beat it, but it's just gonna depend. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.